Spider-Man does whatever a spider can, which presumably involves getting crushed by newspapers and making women scream in the bath.
Well, that was not what I was expecting, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Grab a cup of tea wherever you may be. Hopefully it's not too cold by the end. Welcome back, one and all three of you, including Mike. But, special occasion, Mike is coming with us to join us in Wales soon, so he's not on Twitch. So, Mike, thank you for getting off Twitch.
See, that wasn't so bad, was it?
I know. Welcome back to Beard and the Boyo podcast.
There should be Boyo in the beard, because we are in my country.
We are.
For this.
Yeah, we're in Boyo land this time round. Funny old world, isn't it? So, topic of debate today, we're hitting this relatively fresh, is the Spider-Man controversy with the whole MCU Sony divorce. So, to obviously give you the quick backstory, obviously, Spider-Man was temporarily part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, rebooted and recast in the form of Tom Holland. It was a fabulous continuity that obviously tied it into everything Marvel related. Came to a glorious climax with obviously Avengers Endgame, and then immediately following Spider-Man Far From Home, the second individual film, which obviously was a great film. I don't know about you, but that's probably the best adaptation of Spider-Man that we've ever had.
I really enjoyed it.
But then something which I was always half afraid of happening was obviously Spider-Man is still owned as a licensed property by Sony. So Marvel was essentially borrowing the IP, which means that at some point there was going to be this awful point where I half saw this coming. Marvel doing very, very well with Spider-Man, Disney asking for more terms, and Sony saying jog on. And now we're at a point where everyone's in limbo, / because they're all in love with this adaptation of Spider-Man. We wanted to continue, but the higher ups upstairs have spoilt it for everybody, as per is the way with most things.
We can't have nice things.
Pokemon, Doctor Who, and now Marvel are disappointing us. We're nothing is safe. Let's have your initial gut feelings. What were you like when you first?
Yeah, I mean, I was quite surprised because I was sort of the impression that because they'd always said there were going to be at least three solo Tom Holland films, and presumably whilst the kind of Sony Marvel deal remained, like he would be free to pop up in other people's films and Avengers films as much as he kind of wanted to. So I thought that was kind of done. That was set in stone. That was happening. Maybe after that third film, we'd have to reevaluate a little bit, but I was sort of like considering that
the cliffhanger at the end of Far From Home is very much leading into a third film.
Yeah.
So I feel like drawing his story to some sort of a conclusion in a third film, I'd have been okay with that.
Yeah, I think obviously with Sony, obviously the last couple of live action Spider-Mans haven't done very well. No. You know, you've had Amazing Spider-Man 2, you've had Venom. And so, as far as I was aware, Sony was perfectly happy, and Disney and Marvel were all perfectly happy with this deal that was going on. Obviously, I probably shouldn't have been surprised because, as I say, from everything I'm reading, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong here, but I do feel like this seems to be Disney's fault. Basically, they got a bit greedy, and it's not really Marvel who were behind it, and Sony are just kind of trying to protect themselves. And I shouldn't really be surprised because there's been some fairly dodgy moves on the part of the Mouse House.
Of course. Obviously, this is almost a separate podcast, but Disney are like quietly buying everybody right now, and are about to. I don't know how much you're aware of. They're about to launch their own streaming service.
I've heard about
Disney
this,
Plus, which unfortunately they're tying a hell of a lot of MCU TV shows into the films.
That's why the Netflix stuff has all disappeared.
Yeah,
the Marvel Netflix stuff.
Probably annoyingly begrudgingly get Disney Plus at some point just to make sure I'm still in the loop. But my initial reaction was the same as a lot of people, which is just very angry at Sony for basically upsetting the apple cart. And obviously, it's a few weeks down the line now. I think, in a weird way, it's kind of like watching a really expensive divorce happen. For me, they're both as bad as each other. Because I completely agree with you. Disney have been very greedy, especially in this whole wanting revenue from other Sony properties, like Venom and this alleged Mobius film starring Jared Leto.
I didn't know they'd gone for that, actually, but
that
that does not surprise me.
They've basically asked for 50% of them as well, which is
it's
that's too
not,
much.
It's not on.
At the same time, though,
Yeah.
only getting 5% of the revenue from the Spider-Man films, I think, considering Marvel are pretty much producing these films themselves, they're basically saying, here, we're going to take this property from Sony and we're going to do what we want with it.
Yeah.
But for then Sony to see, well, presumably 95% of the box office for that, I think is unfair.
That having been said, Disney were getting 100% of the marketing revenue.
So, okay, so...
or the merchandise revenue, sorry.
Yeah, so refresh me on what... So basically any toy sales and comic book... Well, movie time comic books and...
That was all going to Marvel/Disney. So when you consider how much Avengers merchandise has featured Spidey over the years, I feel like that probably
I suppose
did
it is like
even out.
a little bit of like give and take, isn't it? For me, it would make far much more sense if Disney just owned the Spider-Man property.
Well, yes.
Sony obviously can acknowledge that this is a hell of a cash cow, and why would they give it up?
Yeah.
The problem now is that Disney have taken this fledgling Sony property that was making like 600, 700 million a film and have turned it into $1 billion franchise on its own again. Because obviously the way Spider-Man was almost the birth of superhero films alongside X-Men films, he's more than just Marvel, in the same way that a Batman film or a Superman film doesn't necessarily need to be tied into DC to manage. So Sony have probably thought, is it the worst thing in the world that we sever ties with them? My argument would be yes, because it's kind of like it's having a chocolate donut with sprinkles. Like, it's so wonderful, and once you've had that, you don't necessarily want to go back to how it was beforehand. Like, Sony could make a perfectly adequate Tom Holland Spider-Man film, because obviously he contracted 2 more films, so we will be getting more Tom Holland as Spider-Man. But it's just a case of it could have been so much more, which is the frustrating part.
And I do feel I've been quite scathing of Disney throughout this, but there's another part of me that, like you just said there, I can't help suspect, was this Sony's plan all along?
Yes.
Like, because Amazing Spider-Man films didn't really take off. Obviously, Venom's quite patchy.
I mean, it made a lot of money, and I think that's what Sony are going to be concerned with. But how many people are going to come back? Yeah. Considering how
and now they've sort of thought, well, what we'll do, Marvel seem to be doing this voodoo magic with superhero films. Just everything they produce is just wonderful.
Yes.
So let's let them have their cake. Let's let them get a good actor, get a good rapport with audiences. Then we'll snatch it back.
Yes.
And audiences, they're hoping, I presume, will follow, because they want to see more Tom Holland, and they want to kind of see that story concluded.
Especially with the whole potential tying of Tom Holland and Tom Hardy.
I mean, to be fair,
Venom, which is an interesting prospect, but I don't trust the quality of Venom's writing over the quality of...
I mean, I wouldn't have swapped that. I mean, obviously, we'd all love to have Venom and all that living in the MCU anyway. Of
course we would.
But if it was a choice, I think
I'd rather have Tom Holland Spider-Man in the MCU. And ignore Venom.
No Venom, exactly.
100%.
What do you think, sort of going forward, sort of the Spider-Man films in the MCU are going to look like now that they're doing a separate thing?
It's very hard to say. It's very hard to say. As I said before, Spider-Man was doing so well, and it was turned into something bigger than what Sony was achieving with the property. So if you look back on Sony's track record with Spider-Man related property, Tobey Maguire's 3 Spider-Man films, the first 2 were amazing.
Yeah, let's not forget that. Solo Spider-Man does not have to be a bad thing.
Precisely. The third Spider-Man film was obviously very bloated, was a bit of a disappointment. Yeah. Still perfectly watchable, but a disappointment. Amazing Spider-Man, for me, they nailed Spider-Man, but Peter Parker was awful.
It was fine, wasn't it?
It wasn't fine, but it wasn't what Spider-Man deserved to be. Yeah, and having seen how good he was in Marvel, I'm just very much wary that we're going to get Tom Holland, but with a very... Okay, so there's 2 scenarios that could play out. One scenario, which I don't think is too far-fetched, is that Sony and Marvel do actually thrash out another deal and work this out. Yeah. Because I think they're both going to realise, hang on, it's too much of a good thing. There would be a hell of a backlash. And for me, as awful as it is to say it, as much as Disney, you're right, have been very greedy here, for me, the only loser in this is going to be Sony. Yeah. Like, it's almost like Sony are backed into a corner here, because as much as they are right to, make sure it's fair, for me, the Disney juggernaut, going one up against the other.
It can't be stopped, can
Disney is going to win this every single time. So for me, Disney should thrash out a fairer deal.
Yeah.
But I think the right thing for Sony to do here would be to renegotiate a deal with Disney, because for me, if Sony basically say, come on, Tom Holland, you're coming with us now, we're going to get 2 okay Spider-Man films that are not going to make $1 billion at the box office. They'll probably barely make their return. I can see a bloody awful moment where there's going to be a Spider-Man film sharing the title with Venom. It'll be like Spider-Man vs Venom, or, you know, Venom having a pedestal that he's no right to be on. You know, he should be in a Spider-Man film, of course. And the idea of Tom Holland going up against Venom is, you know, Tom Holland Spider-Man going up as Venom. That's quite an interesting prospect. But I feel like Sony will milk that more than it needs to be milked, for the sake of, like, quick, let's
get our Spider-Verse underway.
Plus, if you're essentially carrying on with this established continuity of Spider-Man that has been in the MCU, to suddenly take that all away, to carry on with Tom Holland like nothing's happened, you know, essentially what you're going to be left with is Ned in the school, MJ, arguably, you know, some of the established villains beforehand. But they've already laid so much of the this Spider-Man's mythos and lore into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So the fact that Tony Stark is supposedly like his, you know, father figure and all that, to suddenly jump into the film where he's totally fine and okay with this. The fact that presumably such a big part of the next film is going to be that his identity has been revealed to the world. Yeah. And the villain who did that is tied into the MCU. And, you know, obviously it was Mysterio, but it was Mysterio who was an employee of Tony Stark's company. So, are you just going to ignore all that? Are you just going to pretend it's not there? And more to the point, how is Marvel going to address the fact that there's suddenly no Spider-Man involved?
See, for me, I actually think I can envision a world, and I don't necessarily trust Sony. After Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Venom, they've got a bit of a mixed record with Spider-Man films, so I don't necessarily trust them, but I can envision a world where Spider-Man being separate from the MCU, as far as his solo movies go with Tom Holland, I can envision a world where it does actually work.
I'm sure it will work.
Yeah, because obviously we've got a lot of the solo Spider-Man characters. So you got like Aunt May, Ned. Honestly, if Ned goes, we riot.
Yes, absolutely.
MJ, you know, they're quite a good core cast.
Yes, they are.
I think, and obviously if they choose in the next film, which obviously of course they will, to focus on his identity being out, they don't need to refer back to Mysterio too much. You know, they can just sort of talk about the guy that started all this.
Hypothetically, if it's 6 months later, the issue won't be Mysterio's death. It will be that Peter Parker's secret identity has been outed. And
even in terms of Tony Stark, I mean, obviously Happy Hogan will just have to vanish and not appear in the next film for some reason.
Yeah, there'll probably be like an offline about Aunt May's relationship not working out, and that'll be it.
And, you know, they could make references to, my old friend, you know, and obviously they're talking about Tony, but they don't name him, you know, it's just sort of... And I do feel at the end of Far From Home as well, Peter was in a position where he was sort of moving on from Tony and kind of coming into his own. So, like you say, if there's a bit of a time gap of like 6 months or something, you can easily imagine, okay, he's focused on like dealing with the whole fact that his identity's out now. He doesn't have much time to think about Tony. He's just going to move on and like deal with this himself. In many ways, it's Marvel that's actually going to have more cards to shuffle. Yeah. Because, and this could have changed, but I know definitely in the run-up to kind of Infinity War, everything we were told was suggesting that Spider-Man was basically the next Iron Man. Yeah. And that's kind of where his character has been brought. You know, he's definitely a character that has got... Because obviously, at the moment, we're assuming that the Avengers are still kind of in disarray after Endgame. So at some point, another Earth-threatening, Avengers-justifying threat is going to come up, possibly called Galactus, we don't know. And, you know, someone's going to have to step up and say, come on, we've got to get the gang back together.
Yeah, now, isn't necessarily Spider-Man. As in, like, he's not a leader, but he's certainly, like, a potential poster boy.
And he would be the perfect person to do that, because he's going to sort of be like, come on, you know, Tony Stark sacrificed himself to save the Earth. We've got to do this for him. And obviously, he's in a place in the plot and in his character where he would be perfect. And also, like you say, as the poster boy in terms of the affection the audience has for the character work that's been done, he is perfect. Like, there are other characters that the audience enjoys. Like, you've got Doctor Strange, you've got Thor.
Yeah, but when you think of the Avengers, you thought
exactly
of Iron Man, didn't you?
Exactly. Neither of them are in that position.
Spider-Man has that potential to slot into that
where they could really be that kind of poster boy, that sort of leader that the others kind of gather around.
Plus, like, my highlight of Far From Home was the scene where he's basically building his suit a la Iron Man style. It was amazing. And it's like, that's such a natural successor, isn't it?
And then sort of on the other hand, you've got characters like Winter Soldier or Falcon or War Machine who have that rapport with Tony and Cap and could reasonably stand up and be like, we've got to do it for them. But does the audience have the same affection for them that they have for Spider-Man? Not really, in my opinion. No. And that's before you've even considered, obviously, Winter Soldier and Falcon are getting their own TV show, so who's to say they're even going to be available?
Precisely.
So,
it's almost a point where it's like, if you go back 5 years or 6 years when, this deal was struck, knowing how it turned out, would Marvel have been better off almost not having Spider-Man in their continuity? Knowing how it was going to blow up. That's the point I was going to make. I forgot that point. In Far From Home, I'm going on a limb here. I almost felt like Marvel and Disney knew that this meeting was coming to a head.
Yeah.
So they deliberately gave a really big cliffhanger ending.
Yeah.
So that Sony felt, well, how do we resolve this if we're not part of it? The identity being revealed and everything. That's such a mega moment for Spider-Man. Is that something that Sony could confidently take on and press forward with in the same quality that Marvel would have done?
And the sad thing is, they probably can. What they should have done was end with Happy Hogan getting kidnapped. Then they really wouldn't have been able to work their way around that.
Precisely, yeah. Precisely. But that's what. But what are your thoughts on that? I almost feel like Marvel did that.
Yeah.
To sort of say, well, look how open-ended the ending is. You surely can't.
I mean, the thing is, I actually feel that because the whole thing is so, like, Mysterio's obviously a Spider-Man character, Jonah Jameson's a Spider-Man character.
Also, just shout out to that wonderful cameo.
I know, that was amazing, wasn't it? I could not. If you told me, like, going into the film that he was going to show up in that role, I would not have believed you.
No.
It was just so beautiful. As I say, I actually feel like they can do it and it can make sense within that continuity. Unfortunately, I think in many ways, like I say, I was kind of joking with the whole Happy Hogan thing, but like Marvel really would have been better off going with something that could not have been resolved without an MCU-owned character.
Yes.
So, like, I'd say like something happened to Happy, or Falcon showed up and took Spidey off on a quest or something. Something that would have really stung if it had started up again and they couldn't use that character. Whereas 100%. Now, again, I think they're going to be able to get around it. They'll have to put in a few obscure references, like you say, to Aunt May's relationship ending, and
I feel like they'll almost use that as a metaphor for the Disney Sony
expensive divorce, like you say.
Like, it hasn't worked out. It's a shame. Everyone was rooting for it. Yeah, these things happen and all that. There's an opportunity there, and like you say, it's almost like I'm more concerned for what Marvel does at this point, as opposed to what Sony does.
And I do care more about Marvel anyway.
100%. Like if obviously you have the beauty of being able to see as many films as you want, but if you had to choose, would you rather go forwards? Like, it's like, do they even acknowledge either universe still? Because think about it, if something mega happens in Spider-Man's New York, surely the Avengers have to acknowledge that nobody was there to do that. And surely if an apocalyptic event happens in the Marvel films, surely there's going to be reference to where's Peter Parker.
Spidey, exactly, yeah.
So, for me, there is no winner from this.
No, it's going to look
both
messy.
Sides flat out lose. As much as Sony might end up with egg on their face, I think they have not bow to Disney by any stretch, because, like we say, Disney have been too greedy here.
Yeah.
Disney have to go back with a much more realistic deal.
Yeah.
For me, as much as there are merchandising issues, I do think they're entitled to more than 5%, considering they make the films.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't go asking for a 50%.
No.
I mean, 50% I could just about understand with a Spider-Man film, but asking for 50% of other Sony properties is just stupid.
It's just not.
Considering they're like rolling in it and will be rolling in it and will always be rolling in it, I think that's just flat out dumb what they've done there. So for me, it is like a bit of column A and a bit of column B.
Yeah,
like,
they need compromise.
Both sides have gone in with too much like, my dick's bigger than your dick, and they haven't thought it through. And
it almost feels almost offensive to the fans, doesn't it? Because
we're the losers here. At the end of the day, Disney aren't going to care they don't have Spider-Man. Sony aren't going to care that their character's not in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The only people, once again, who are going to lose out here is the fans who have fallen in love with this character.
Think of the children.
Think of the children. So what is your honest prediction? What happens now? Obviously, what would you like to happen now? But what happens now?
Well, obviously, you know what I'd like. I'd like them to come back to the table and sort it all out, and we get to carry on with. But assuming that doesn't happen, I think I've sort of covered. I think there'll be 2 more Spider-Man films with Tom Holland. There'll be Solo. If they play their cards right, they will get away with the continuity issue.
Yes.
But they are going to have to play their cards right. And obviously we'll notice it because we'll go and watch them and we'll be looking for it. We'll be like, oh yeah, that's where you would have mentioned Iron Man, but you can't. So you're talking about Peter's mentor, which I'm saying in air quotes.
Yeah. For sure.
But they'll get away with it, and obviously we'll resolve the secret identity thing in the next film, and the final film will be something on its own that just kind of closes it all off.
Yeah, for sure. And then they'll probably end up rebooting it again.
And it'll be fine. And like you said, there probably will be, the Spidey meets Venom film, and that'll all spin off, and their Spider-Verse will finally get going.
Yeah, but they'll make it such a bigger deal than it needed to be. Like, Spider-Man films are fine, and when he's part of the MCU, I like that he's a part of it, not all of it. The idea of putting Venom on a pedestal. Yeah. Like, as much as Venom's, it was a smart choice to do what they did because it made them almost $1 billion, I think, that Venom film. But Venom isn't big enough to carry a franchise.
And, Venom wasn't a great film either.
It was very poor.
It was choppy. Tom Hardy is fantastic in the role. Yeah. He is the perfect Eddie Brock. But the film itself was patchy and,
just very meh.
You could definitely see the production issues behind
100%.
But like I say, they are treating that as sort of Venom is their Iron
baby.
Man.
Haha, well, we don't need you. We've got Venom. We know what we're doing. And we're just I didn't go to see Venom in the cinemas. Yeah. And if the inevitable Venom 2, I won't be going to see it in the cinemas again. And my prediction is that'll still make maybe 600 million. But when you factor in marketing campaigns and movie productions, it probably will just about break even with how much they spend in it. So, like you, I feel like if Sony inherit the property, like it looks like they're going to, they'll limp towards the end of Tom Holland's contract rather than going out in a big tour de force hurrah.
For the MCU, meanwhile, I the MCU have got plenty of things to be going on with.
Of course they do.
But I just think it's going to sting them because at the moment they haven't got this poster boy.
There's always going to be a what could have been.
Yeah.
And they have to very quickly bring somebody else to the front. But the problem is they did Spider-Man so well.
I know.
They nailed it.
Yeah.
And to the point where it's almost like you did too well. You made it too good. To the point where you made this thing that we can't afford to lose. Yeah. And you've lost it.
Or maybe it'll find me. Maybe Shang-Chi or whatever his name is will become the new poster boy, and everyone will love him. And
for me, they should have tried far harder with Doctor Strange because I feel like he is a natural leader of the MCU.
He could have worked.
I don't think he could have been a poster boy, but he could have very much been like a Captain America-esque.
He could have been in terms of the plot. He could have been a good umbrella character, and who knows? We'll see how this multiverse of madness thing works out. But and obviously, again, the question in the MCU as well is what do they do about Spider-Man? Yeah. Just please, for goodness sake, don't mention
don't start a movie with a funeral.
Yeah,
or
don't
have some unmentionable. Where's such and such out of action? And that's Tom Holland's legacy.
Yeah,
deserves better than that.
If anything, I'd kind of prefer the MCU just ignored Spider-Man's absence, and then hopefully we can then bring it. Because if they kill him off screen, you then can't bring him back.
That complicates it even more.
Yeah, it's
that removes any potential renegotiation, and that almost as much as. It's going to be a shame not to see Spider-Man in Marvel films. I'm still going to count Sony's Tom Holland films as part of the continuity. Yeah. So the best thing they can do, Marvel, Disney, is just, like you say, ignore it. Yeah. Because anything else they do, they're just going to end up like a spoiled kid with egg on their face.
Leave the door open. Yeah. Because at the moment, obviously, there's been no Avengers 5 announced at this point anyway. No. So hopefully we've got a few years yet until production goes in. All the films at the moment that are coming out look like, Spider-Man's not going to naturally pop up in them anyway. Because you've got things like the Eternals, you've got Blade, you've got all of that. There's no reason why Spidey needs to be involved in any of them. No. So, give it a few years. Hopefully by that point, maybe something will have been worked out. Yeah. And if not, just focus on bringing in new characters, get them good, get us to love them, and then maybe we won't notice that Spider-Man's not there. So it can work. We can get through this, but...
essentially just treat your audience nice. Don't be childish about this and make stupid decisions in films that are going to lead to even more repercussions. You spilt the apple cart. Don't go around trotting on all the apples now.
That's it, isn't it? Just be adults.
Pick up what you can and go forward with that, and don't be stupid. That's all I can really say about this.
Yeah.
And I think that's been drawn to a pretty
yes
natural conclusion, really.
I had to go get a shower.
You need to go get a
Just
shower.
thought I'd fill you. I'm going to go do that if Jake will finish off for you.
That is okay with me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to Beard and the Boyo. I can almost hear the theme tune playing in my head now as it's wrapping up. Thank you very much for listening. Give us your opinions on what you think Spider-Man should do next. And thank you for listening. We will see you in another episode very soon. Bye for now. Beard and the Boyo was recorded in front of a live empty space, starring Jake Saunders and John Bowen.
Also, Mike, get off Twitch.
Also, Mike, get off Twitch.